Rushdown is an extreme sports game that was released for the PlayStation both in Europe and in North America in 1999 and was published by Electronic Arts. And this game tries to capitalise on the popularity of the extreme sports games that were becoming a popular genre within the PlayStation during its lifespan. As you had other games the likes of Cool Borders, there was No Fear downhill mountain biking, among many other extreme sports games. But where this game builds upon is the fact is that it's technically 3 games in one, as you have multiple different sports modes available. You have snowboarding, there's downhill mountain biking, and you have kayaking, all within the one game, which is pretty cool as it does offer a lot to play through, even with a multiplayer mode where you can play with your mates. So the gameplay itself can be quite fast and frantic, and it boasts full 3D environments that allows you to race on lots of treacherous terrain, and you do have to be mindful that you can fall off cliffs and fall off ledges while on the bikes and the snowboards. And you have 15 different types of tracks that span 5 continents that range from snowy mountains to various jungles and mountain cliff sides. The game itself unfortunately did not get great reviews in the magazines, mainly criticising the game for its linear style of gameplay and the sheer frustration of the gameplay mechanics, as it can be quite a tough game to get to grips with and to master. But coupled with that and the graphics themselves, compared to other extreme sports games on the PS1, the graphics wouldn't be up as a high quality compared to other games that were released on the system at that time. But what it lacks in those areas does make up for in the amount of content that is available in the game, but it is difficult to play. So even when you look at the likes of the snowboarding mode, now it is playable, but I find that the controls in it, from my own personal experience of playing the game, it isn't as enjoyable compared to other snowboarding games, primarily the likes of the Cool Border series or even Trick and Snowboarder, among other snowboarding games that were released on the system. The gameplay mechanics in those games were a lot more refined and they were more user friendly. The controls in this game seem somewhat cumbersome and quite frustrating to use compared to other snowboarding games, but even at that, it is worth a try just to experience it. But it is very linear compared to a lot of those other games. Even with the likes of the mountain biking sequence, it is very fast paced, but again, like the snowboarding, the controls can be quite sensitive and clunky, and there's a lot of treacherous terrain and hazards that are literally littered throughout each stage, to a point that they can always get in your way. Sometimes in some cases there's just too many trees and obstacles to overcome that more often than not you will crash and fall off your bike at regular intervals. Where I found the game to be the most enjoyable was actually in the kayaking sequence, as even though the graphics themselves compared to other games in the system isn't considered to be that great, but I found that the kayaking section had the best visuals out of all the modes in the game. It had really nice looking visuals on the backgrounds in terms of the jungle settings and the treacherous river terrain, where you're on like dangerous type of lakes where you have high currents of water gushing down and they're dragging you along with the current as you're playing, which can make it quite dangerous but also quite fun to navigate. Now the controls themselves are quite sluggish, but it is probably the most enjoyable part of this game, as coupled with the visuals, which is definitely that part of the game I think that has the best features. It was definitely the most enjoyable because it was the most fun and even quite challenging, but it just was a unique experience in itself, because there isn't too many of those type of games on the system, even if any that even I could find. But for me, I enjoyed that part more than any other portion of the game, as it was quite fun but yet also very challenging, and it really made you think about exactly what it was that you were doing on each track. Now the game is difficult because you've also got a timer, because it uses a lot of arcade elements, which means you have to complete each of the levels within a limited time, and the further you get into the campaign the more difficult it becomes, to a point that if you don't get to the timer in time it's literally game over and you have to start the timer process again. So that in itself can be quite frustrating, but coupled with that on top of the clunky controls can make the experience a lot more frustrating for most players. But if you are looking for a very unique take on a lot of these extreme style sports games that has everything in one unique package, even though it's not as well polished compared to other games in the system, for the experience alone it is worth checking out just to see what it's all about. And I'd love to know your thoughts on Rushdown for the PlayStation, if you have played it yourself, and if so, what experiences do you have on the game from back in the day? Did you enjoy it, or maybe not so much? Or which mode of the game did you enjoy the most? Be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated when future videos are released. And if you would like to see more videos on other types of extreme sports games that were also released on the PS1, then be sure to check out the playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And until next time, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and keep those gaming memories alive.